You don't have to be loud to be brave.
She's just the help's kid. Who let her walk through here with those monsters? The words weren't said softly behind a curtain or beneath someone's breath. They made a lot of noise, sharp, deliberately uttered with just enough malice to get through the newly trimmed hedges of Claremont Terrace, a pleasant, upper-middle-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Savannah, Georgia. A neighborhood that is proud of how polite, orderly, and barely veiled intolerant it is. Zariah Bennett was only 14, but she already knew exactly how they saw her. Not Zariah, not a girl, not a neighbor, the black waitress's daughter. The one with the grin that was too dazzling, the posture that was too haughty, and the dogs that were too huge. She didn't fit in here. Not in their morning routines, not on their clean walkways, and definitely not when she walked 4 strong cane corsos like she ruled the place. But she was there every morning, no matter what, with leashes in hand. Hold your head up high. Shoes are clean yet dusty. Her big gray hoodie was tucked in perfectly, and nary a hair was out of place. Zariah didn't walk in dread. She walked with rhythm. She strolled like the sidewalk was hers, even though no one had told her it was. People looked. Some people shook their heads. Some people pulled their youngsters a little closer as she walked by. The dogs didn't bark. They didn't snarl. They just marched with her, quietly, like soldiers standing next to a general. It was a routine so exact that it seemed like dancing. But there was something more going on under the surface. This girl wasn't just walking dogs. This was a story that was being written as it happened. A story about black people. One that no one in that area wanted to talk about, but one you won't be able to forget. Welcome to Hidden Worth, where we find the value that most people miss. If you already feel something moving, don't click away. Because of Zariah's truth? It's bigger than dogs. There is more to it than race. And once you realize what's really going on, you'll never look at morning walks or communities that judge you the same way again. Let's go back to the start. Before anyone knew who she was, before the world found out what she was hiding, Zariah didn't talk much. At least, she didn't talk much to the people next door. Not to the folks who observed her from behind curtains or stopped their morning runs to stare. But if you truly paid attention, you would see that the way she moved with those dogs was unusual. It wasn't typical. These weren't the kind pets you would see at the park that wagged their tails. These were beasts, 4 purebred cane corsos, each weighing more than 100 pounds and with muscles that rippled under their sleek gray and black coats. Their heads were very high. They were continually looking around. When they heard something, their ears twitched. They didn't make any noise. They didn't pursue squirrels or sniff fire hydrants. They moved like skilled soldiers, as if they were on duty. And what about Zariah? She was the one in charge. Don't pull on the leash. No loud orders. The dogs obeyed right away with just a snap of the fingers or a tilt of the chin. One strolled a little ahead, 2 walked on either side of her, and the biggest stayed behind, always monitoring her back. Anyone could see it if they looked closely. They weren't just walking with her. They were keeping her safe. What was the strangest part? Nobody knew where the dogs came from. Aliyah, Zariah's mother, worked 2 shifts at the waffle spot on Highway 17. She didn't have pets, and they didn't have a yard. Pets weren't allowed in the 2-bedroom flat above the laundromat. But every morning, without fail, Zariah came out from behind that building with leashes in hand, as if the dogs had been waiting for her. People started talking. The dogs may have been her late father's. They might have been rescued from a secret training ring. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't even hers. But no one would approach close enough to ask. Not after what happened to Mr. Grayson. One morning, the retired insurance agent was mistaken for trying to shoo her away from his immaculately maintained hedges. The dogs didn't run at them. They didn't bite. But in just a few seconds, they changed their formation, stepping between Zariah and the man, their eyes locked and their bodies stiff. Mr. Grayson stepped back without saying anything else. People stayed apart from each other after that day. And what about Zariah? She kept on walking. Every day. She continued to walk at the same time every day. Same way. The 4 peculiar dogs were positioned beside her. And always, that silent storm beneath her grin. It wasn't just strange. It was something I will never forget. And soon, the world would want answers. You people will do anything to get attention, huh? That line came from the passenger seat of a dented pickup truck one Wednesday morning. and it was loud enough to get people on the other side of the street to look. Zariah didn't even blink, but the hounds stopped. Their heads turned in perfect time, their eyes narrowed, and their bodies stiffened like statues made of steel. The truck rushed away before anything could happen. That wasn't the first time, though, not even close. People in Monroe Heights, where lawns were cut like golf courses and porch lights went on all night, didn't expect to see someone like Zariah going around like she belonged. Not with those dogs, though. Not at all with her skin. There was only one black kid on Oakwell Lane. People made sure she knew it, too. Some people whispered when she walked by. Some people laughed even harder. People said the word ghetto more times than anyone could count. It didn't matter that her clothing was spotless, her shoes were tied tightly, or her posture was flawless. They thought she didn't fit. In their world, she could never. Kids at the nearby middle school called her the stray girl. They called her the stray girl, not due to any dogs, but because they claimed she lacked a real home. Fortunately, she had a real home. Once, one youngster threw a phony dog collar at her backpack and declared it was hers, real family. His friends laughed so hard they cried. Parents also got involved, sometimes without saying anything, by holding their child's hand tightly when they crossed paths. Sometimes, the doors of the automobile were locked when she walked by. The discussion would change whenever she got too close. Zariah never fought back. She continued going, but something inside burnt. The pets weren't the only thing that mattered. It wasn't simply about being unique. It was about being noticed. People are afraid of you for the wrong reasons. She felt overlooked by the right people. Her mom, Aaliyah, did her best, but having 2 jobs didn't leave much time for deep talks. Her feet were swollen, her eyes were heavy, and she smelled like coffee and syrup when she got home. And still, she'd kneel next to Zariah's bed and say, "Keep your chin up, baby. You stroll with a goal. Don't let them take your shine." That is exactly what Zariah did. She walked with more confidence. She grinned more brightly. And the dogs? They did what she said. Steady, concentrated, fierce. But the thing with bias is that it doesn't go away just because you handle it well. No. It waits for the right moment to attack. And Zariah's time was approaching, faster than she thought it would be. It was just like any other day. The sun came up above the rooftops, and the soothing light melted the morning fog. Zariah tied her sneakers tightly, put on her red hoodie, and clipped the leashes into place. Her crew, 5 canines, each with a different gait but the same unyielding focus, stood waiting. She opened the gate, stepped onto the sidewalk, and walked like a clock. Go left on Main, go right on Pine. Go back around by Sycamore Street. Same way, same time, same, Zariah. But that morning, things didn't feel right. Samson, the oldest dog, a Belgian Malinois with gray fur and eyes that looked like wet stones, kept looking behind them. His ears moved around more than usual. His walk changed. He was on guard. He was awake. Too awake. Zariah saw. She didn't say anything, but her gaze moved across the corners and rooftops of the street. The people in the area were still half asleep. The sprinklers made a buzzing sound. Newspapers fell with a thud on driveways, but the quiet didn't seem right. Then she saw it. A shadow. Someone stood still across the street, behind the overgrown hedges of an empty house. Not just still, but frozen. Looking. Zariah could see the shape of a camera, but the figure was too far away to see clearly. The lens shone in the sun for a second before it went behind a tree. She continued going, but her heart rate went up. Who would want to be with a girl like her? She wasn't well known. She didn't have a lot of money. She was simply Zariah, the daughter of a waitress, walking dogs that had previously gone unnoticed until now. The dogs didn't move. They closed in on her like they had done it a million times before. That close formation and wordless bond were second nature to me. But suddenly it seemed like something else, like a sign. The stranger was gone by the time they got to the gas station near the end of the road. At least, that is my perspective. Zariah couldn't sleep that night. She had many questions that she couldn't answer. Who had been looking? Why? And most importantly, what had they seen? She told herself that it might be a reporter, or a neighbor who wanted to know more about the popular videos. But deep inside, she knew the situation was not the same. It wasn't about the dogs anymore. Someone was trying to piece together her narrative. That meant that someone had finally looked past her skin, her sweatshirt, and her quiet and seen something true, something strong, something that could hurt the town's reputation. But they were about to find out that she was more than just a tiny black girl with some well-trained dogs. Zariah was more than just a puzzle. She was like a mirror, and someone didn't like what they saw. The next morning, Ashford Ridge came to life under a shroud of morning fog. Cars moved slowly down Main Street, kids waited for their school buses, and the cafe on the corner served hot coffee with sleepy smiles. But Ethan Harper, the man who had been watching Zariah from the shadows, wasn't drinking any coffee. He was sitting in his truck with his hands on the wheel and his eyes on a shed that was falling apart behind a chain-link fence. He had followed her again the day before, and something about the last stop she made stayed with him all night. The ancient animal shelter on the edge of town had been closed for more than 6 years. The county ran out of money, and after a short attempt to turn it into a community center, it was boarded up and forgotten. But Zariah hadn't walked by it. She had gone in. Ethan parked a block away, pulled his hat down, and took out his camera. His breath fogged up in the cold air as he walked through the long grass and got closer to the shelter. The door wasn't locked, even though it was old and warped. He pushed it open very slowly. The first thing he noticed was the smell. Damp concrete, a faint whiff of antiseptic, and something else. Something warm and familiar. Dog hair. The room was dark, yet beams of sunlight came through breaches in the boarded-up windows. It looked like everything had been left behind. There were cobwebs all over the bookcases, but there were new footsteps in the dust. Little footsteps. He proceeded carefully, looking about, until he saw a metal door at the other end. It appeared like a closet for tools, but as he opened it, he noticed steps. They went down into the dark. He went down without thinking. What he saw at the bottom made him forget to breathe. A secret area with battery-powered lights that make it look like it's lit. There were a dozen kennels, all immaculate, with blankets on the floor and dogs inside. There were German shepherds, labs, and huskies all lying down quietly. Their gaze was cautious but kind. Bowls of food are full, shelves full of medical supplies, folders with notes that have been printed. A picture was also fastened to the wall. A woman in a uniform with a waitress badge is holding a younger Zariah, maybe 3 years old. The woman is her mother. The bar wasn't merely a place to hide. It was a safe place, a job, and a teenage girl was responsible for everything. Ethan Harper sat at his desk later that day, surrounded by notes, pictures, and the deafening silence of the truth settling in. He had been a reporter for more than 20 years, but nothing had shocked him like what he found in that underground bunker. What was this girl truly like, and who had taught her to care for and love animals the way she did? It turned out that the answer wasn't in a headline but in a file that had been forgotten. He drove to the county clerk's office, where old records were kept in the dark and dust. He was able to get into the old animal shelter's files with a little charm and an old press credential. That's when Loretta Daniels's name came up, mother of Zariah. The report said that Loretta was a single black lady in her early 32s who worked at the Route 5 diner as a waitress. She was known for pulling extra shifts and always making customers happy. But there was another side to her that the public never truly saw. Loretta used to work for an organization that saved and trained former police and military canines. She had always wanted to start a full-time dog rescue and therapy center. But that dream went away when she had Zariah. It wasn't simple to be a single mother, especially in a place like Ashford Ridge. People didn't say it out loud, but Loretta felt it every day, the way they looked at her and the way their voices dropped as she walked by. A black woman in her 20s with big plans? Some people thought she was dangerous. Some people just didn't pay attention to her at all. She put all of her energy into rearing Zariah. And if she couldn't give money or comfort, she supplied advice. She encouraged her kid to be bold and kind and constantly look out for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. Even though her house wasn't big enough for them all, Loretta kept a handful of the dogs she helped save. Ethan found one more thing. Loretta's obituary. She had perished 3 years before in an automobile accident when a delivery truck hit her on her way home from work. No news coverage, no ceremony. Just a short note in the local paper, tucked between advertising for garage sales. And that's when everything fell into place. Zariah wasn't only walking dogs. She was now in charge of her mother's mission. She had transformed her sadness into a goal. Every stride she took through town and every leash she held was part of a vow that was made in love and kept in quiet. The morning the first news program aired, Ashford Ridge woke up in a different way. For years, it had been quiet in a way that only wealthy suburbs can be. Two-car garages shining in the morning sun, white picket fences, and freshly maintained hedges. But now there was a break in the silence, a light on the stage. A local reporter wrote a piece that said, "Teen girl and her pack of dogs, what's the story?" The pictures came up on the screen. One 4-year-old Zariah Bennett, walking 4 big dogs down Willow Lane at exactly 6:30 a.m. The camera stayed on the dogs for a while, then on the girl's calm, direct gaze into the lens. People stopped watching. There were many comments online. The clip garnered thousands of shares, hundreds of likes, and dozens of tweets with the phrase "Black story you need to see within 24 hours. Zariah was no longer just the daughter of the black waitress. She was in the news. When her face showed up on the big TV networks, and the banner below said "Teen Hero in Suburbia," people started to talk about her in a different way. Some were pleased, some people were wary, some people were outraged. But no one could ignore her anymore. People who used to shut their doors as she walked by now stopped to look. Drivers rolled down their windows and waved in disbelief. People on social media commented, "Who gave her those dogs?" People asked, "Where is her mom? Is she okay?" The tone went from judgment to interest. Keisha Rowe, her mother, got calls that she never thought she would have to answer. People from animal rescue groups, local charities, and even a major morning show on TV got in touch. They wanted to talk to them. They wanted to know what was going on behind the story. But Keisha and Zariah weren't sure. They had never asked for anyone to notice them. They only answered when they were ready. Their silence just made the camera's glare worse. The town of Ashford Ridge, which had earlier been contemptuous, had to face its beliefs. A black girl with big dogs, a mother who works 2 shifts and is silent, a heritage that is right in front of you. They turned the pieces into a story of grief, discrimination, and determination. The phrases rescue, legacy, service dogs, and racial bias started to show up in the same sentence. As Zariah walked by, the neighborhood began to change. Students at Ridgeview Middle School mumbled behind laptops in the cafeteria. Teachers cleared their throats in a strange way. Memes were shared on the school's social media platforms, but a lot of them stopped when they saw the picture of Zariah smiling with a leash in one hand and dogs around her like guards. Some people privately expressed their apologies to her, while others simply looked on. And the dogs, those 4 strong, well-behaved canines who never barked for attention, became symbols as well. When news teams sought close-ups, the camera showed their collars with faded service numbers and how steady they were standing. The story changed. It was no longer about a girl who walked dogs. It was about obligation, memory, loss, and legacy. The hashtag number Hiddenworth had gone viral by the end of the day. People from all over the country shared their personal tales of overlooked young individuals who achieved remarkable feats. It felt like everyone in the country was ready to listen. That night, Zariah sat on her porch with the dogs peacefully at her feet. The lights from cars that went by made long shadows. The walk tomorrow morning would be visible for once. People would watch it, but she was prepared. Now the story was not just hers. It belonged to everyone. They got there just after the news broke. Just after daylight, 3 SUVs drove into the cracked parking lot of the empty shelter. 5 people wearing matching navy coats with the logo of the National Animal Welfare League stepped out of the doors at the same time. They went fast, with clipboards in one hand and cameras on their shoulders. Their eyes were searching every inch of the old edifice. Zariah was already there. She stood by the kennels with her hands in her hoodie pockets, and her face was difficult to read. The dogs were quiet, looking, waiting. Janine Caldwell, the lead cop, came up to her with a practiced smile. "Are you Zariah Bennett?" Zariah nodded. Janine bent down a little to look kind, but her remarks were very authoritative. "We got many reports regarding this place. We just need to check on the animals and make sure everything is up to code." It wasn't a request. The agents looked at every crate, dish, and label on the shelves within. They wrote down notes, took pictures, and talked to each other in whispers. One of them looked at the makeshift medical logs with interest. Another person pointed to the temporary heating system Zariah had built with solar panels and battery packs. "This is unusual," Janine murmured, tapping her pen on the door of a kennel. "Impressive," she said. "But in a technical sense, it is not allowed by law." Zariah's throat got constricted. They didn't see what she saw. They didn't see the midnight feedings, the hours spent cleaning wounds, settling shaking bodies, and developing trust with dogs that no one else wanted. They saw numbers, breaking the rules, responsibility. Janine said, "If no adult is legally responsible for these animals, we must take them, right now." The remarks hurt more than any insult ever had. Zariah's lips moved, but she didn't say anything. The dog stepped up behind her, calm, and ready to guard her, just like every other time. But before she could say anything, a new voice broke through the frigid morning air. Keisha stepped into the shelter, where the frigid air made her breath visible. "She's not alone," she muttered. "I'm her mom. I am fully responsible." Janine whirled around in shock. She didn't expect help, certainly not from the woman who worked 2 shifts at the diner. Keisha moved slowly, with a calm and steady gait. "These dogs saved lives. They have a second opportunity now. And what about my daughter? They are still alive because of her. You have to go through both of us if you want to take them." Janine didn't answer right away. She just glanced at Zariah, the silent girl with too much on her plate, and knew she might have been the most qualified person there. That day, the agents didn't take the dogs, but they also didn't leave without something. They departed with a question. What do you do when the law can't keep up with compassion? It took place at the town hall. The mayor held an emergency meeting to talk about the situation with unauthorized use of public property and the welfare of unlicensed animals. The words were courteous, but everyone understood what they meant. They were chatting about Zariah. The council room was full that night. There were so many people from the area that all the seats were full. Those who couldn't find a seat stood in the rear or looked through the large windows from outside. The buzz was tremendous. The walls were lined with reporters. People were tapping on their cell phones. The girl with the dogs was going to say something. Zariah sat in the front row with her shoulders straight and her hands quietly on her lap. Keisha sat next to her, quiet yet eager. The mayor cleared his throat and asked if anyone wanted to speak out in front of everyone. Zariah got up. For a moment, everything stopped. She proceeded to the center microphone at the same steady pace that the village had seen for years, as if every step had a purpose. She didn't look terrified when she peered out at the audience. She seemed sure. She said, "My name is Zariah Bennett. I take dogs for walks every morning. Some of you know that. Some of you have called me names because of it. Some of you didn't say anything. You just looked away. But I wasn't showing off by walking them. I was walking them because they needed me to, and because I needed them." She stopped for a moment, her voice steady. "These dogs aren't just pets. They are veterans. They've done their duty for our country. And after their work was done, they were thrown away. My mom kept them. After she died, I took over where she left off." People in the room started to murmur. A few folks moved around awkwardly. Some people leaned in. "I don't want your money. I'm not even asking you to praise me," Zariah said. "I'm asking you to understand. These dogs were helpful. We need to help them now. If we can't accomplish that, what kind of town are we?" There was a break. Then, someone in the back of the room clapped. Then one more, and one more. In just a few seconds, the room was filled with applause. The mayor even nodded slowly and clapped his hands. Zariah didn't smile. Not yet. She knew the present wasn't the end. But Ashford Ridge wasn't looking through her this time. They were staring at her, and people were finally recognizing her for who she truly was, not just a girl with dogs, but a leader. It didn't happen overnight that Ashford Ridge changed, but it all started with one girl, 4 dogs, and a reality that was too powerful to remain hidden. A week after the town hall meeting, a group of volunteers, most of whom had never met Zariah before, showed up at the old shelter with paint cans, timber, and new dog food. The building went from being a disregarded construction to a tidy, useful shelter. They repaired the fence. They put in heaters. Someone even gave them a new washer and dryer exclusively for the dog blankets. Every Thursday, Mrs. Weatherby, a neighbor who used to cross the street as Zariah passed, brought her baked sweets. She stated, "For the pups," but she always left a second bag with the letter Z on it. The change was slow but real. Kids from school who used to make fun of her suddenly asked if they could walk a dog too. Businesses in the area arranged a fundraiser and got enough money to make the shelter a legal nonprofit. It was called Loretta's Legacy. Zariah didn't want to be recognized. She still got up early. She still took the dogs for a walk every morning. But now she wasn't by herself. Other teens came over on Saturday mornings. Some were white, some were black, and some were Latino. It didn't matter. Everyone was there for the same reason: to be part of something bigger than themselves. Previously overworked and ignored, Keisha now serves as a local spokesperson for programs that support young people. People who used to disregard her listened to her voice. She grinned more often now. She slept for a bit longer. And sometimes, late at night, she would sit on the front porch with Zariah and say, "I told you. Don't give up." Zariah's life didn't get any better. She still had to deal with judgment and work harder than most youngsters her age. But now, the world respected her strength. Reporters still called. Foundations got in touch. One university even offered her a scholarship when she was ready, saying it was for leadership in animal welfare and community development. Zariah kept walking the whole time. But now her route was bigger, brighter, and shared. And every step she took brought back memories of something the town had almost forgotten. That being a leader doesn't always mean having a title or wearing a suit. Occasionally, it's a girl in a red hoodie who is doing the right thing even when no one is looking. She thought someone should always do it. And now they really were. The envelope came on a clear fall morning. White. Embossed. The seal of the United States Department of Veterans Affairs is on it. At first, Keisha thought it was a mistake and that it was just another letter for someone else. But when she opened it and read the letter out loud, both the mother and the daughter stopped. Zariah Bennett had been put up for the Presidential Medal of Honor for civilian service. At the age of 14, after weeks of national attention, including a TV documentary that told the whole tale of the dogs, their service experience, their abandonment, and the part Zariah played in restoring their dignity, the nomination came. It had interviews with military people who said that the dogs had earlier been part of secret search and rescue missions in other countries. People thought that none of them could be adopted. All of them had evidence of PTSD. But with Zariah's help, they all got better. They had also kept her safe, shown her the path, and raised her in more than one manner. The event took place on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., where a small group of veterans, community leaders, and reporters gathered under a clear sky. Zariah had on a navy blue outfit. She had a basic braid in her hair and plain white sneakers that were still dirty from her morning stroll. She didn't walk the stage by herself. Samson, Diesel, Nova, and Rocco, the 4 dogs, walked next to her with their heads held high and their leashes in hand. The audience stood up when she got up to the stage, not only for her, but because of all she stood for. Bravery in the face of silence, responsibility beyond her years, and a type of quiet bravery that no medal could ever really convey. The medal was pinned to her chest by a retired general. The cameras went off. People started to clap. Zariah gazed out at the crowd and spoke in a calm voice. "I didn't do anything to get attention. I did this because it needed to be done. These dogs are more than simply pets. They are troops. They were individuals who made a difference in their lives. And they should be remembered. My mom taught me that the strongest individuals aren't usually the loudest. They're the ones that show up every day without asking for praise." There was no fanfare or theatrical bow at the end of her remarks. Zariah stepped down, and the dogs stood by her like the heroes they were. She was no longer merely a girl from Georgia after that day. She stood for something. A reminder. Every act of love, no matter how tiny, silent, or inconvenient, is always valuable. And occasionally, it makes everything different. Just before the light comes up, the world is so calm that you can hear your breath. The air is cool and calm, and it seems to be holding its breath with you. Zariah loved that period. This was before the medals, the news cameras, and the whispers transformed into applause. She constantly stated, "That's when the world seems real." Zariah didn't want to be observed on her journey. It was about walking with a goal, even when no one else was watching. This included people making fun of her appearance, criticizing her mother's work, or attempting to define her worth with their narrow imaginations. She didn't get frustrated and fight back. She didn't fight fire with fire. She went on a walk. She came. Every day. And that's the lesson that is concealed under the headlines and hashtags. That brilliance doesn't come with a lot of noise. It shows up in how we act when no one is watching, how we shoulder our weight without complaining, and how we safeguard what's important even when it's not easy. Zariah's narrative isn't only about dogs, racism, or a town that ultimately wakes up. It's all about light, the kind that doesn't wait for someone to give it permission to shine, the type that breaks through gaps in ancient sidewalks and gets into places that have been forgotten. That same glow is in every child who has been told they weren't good enough, in every parent who works 2 jobs and still shows up with love, in every individual who does the right thing quietly, persistently, and bravely. You might not be strolling retired war dogs before daybreak. Maybe you're just getting through the day. But at some point, you could be Zariah for someone. To lead, not with loudness, but with your heart. So, here's what we want you to do. If you notice someone being ignored, do something about it. When you hear silence, when you should be getting help, speak up. And the next time you want to criticize someone from the outside, think about the girl in the hoodie, the one who walked dogs so hard that everyone had to notice. This is Hidden Worth, where we find the tales that need to be told. Don't just scroll past this if it moved you. Tell others about it. Talk about it. Be about it. There aren't enough perfect individuals in the world. It needs more people like Zariah. People who walk with brightness. Even when the journey is filled with darkness, there is a need for more individuals like Zariah.